Have you ever looked at a piece of art and thought, why does this look so professional and mine does not? You could be using the same tools, the same techniques, and yet something feels off. Well, it turns out your brain already knows the answer. Because whether we realize it or not, the way we perceive art isn't just about skill, it's about psychology, neuroscience, and a bit of visual trickery. And today, I'm going to show you how professional artists use this science to make their work look effortless. And trust me, once you learn this, you'll never see art the same way again. Let's start with a weird fact about your brain. It hates randomness. It craves pattern, structure, and balance, even when we don't consciously notice it. This is why some art pieces instantly feel appealing, while others feel chaotic or incomplete. Story time. Have you ever walked into a messy room and instantly felt overwhelmed? Even if you can't pinpoint exactly why it feels messy, your brain picks up on the lack of structure. The same thing that happens with art. Professional artists understand this and use intentional structure to guide the viewer's eyes exactly where they want it. Take the rule of thirds, for example. You've probably heard of it, but why does it work? Studies show that our eyes naturally gravitate towards certain focal points on an image. We don't like looking at things that are perfectly centered. We prefer balance with slight asymmetry. And this goes even deeper. There's something called visual hierarchy, a subconscious ranking system in your brain that determines what's important in an image. If an artwork doesn't have a clear hierarchy, it feels flat, no matter how detailed it is. Quick test. Look at your last artwork. Can you instantly tell what the main focal point is? If not, chances are your composition is fighting against your brain's natural instinct. One of the biggest myths in art is that pro artists add more detail. The truth? They know exactly where to add detail and where to let the viewer's brain do the work. This is called selective detail. Fun fact, your brain is wired to fill in the blanks when it sees something familiar. That's why when you look at a blurry image of a face, you can still recognize it. Your brain fills in the missing information. Professional artists take advantage of this by putting sharp, clear details only in key areas, usually the focal points. Meanwhile, everything else is often left loose, blurry, or even unfinished. That's why when you zoom in on a master painting, you'll notice that things like hair, backgrounds, and even hands are often just suggested, not fully rendered. An example is the Mona Lisa's magic. Take Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, for example. Her eyes and mouth are sharp and detailed, but the edges of her face, her hair, and the background, they fade softly. This is an intentional technique called sfumato, and it tricks your brain into believing the image is more detailed than it actually is. Here's the best part. Once you learn, you can stop overworking your pieces and focus on what really matters. Now, let's talk about something that separates good art from art that sticks with you. Emotion. Did you know studies show that we remember emotionally charged images far better than neutral ones? That's why artworks that exaggerate expressions, movement, or atmosphere tend to feel more alive. This is something called the peak end rule. Our brain doesn't remember the entire image. They remember the most emotional or striking part of it. That's why the best artists push emotions just like a little beyond reality. Not to the point of looking fake, but enough to make it unforgettable. Think about Van Gogh's swirling skies. They feel like they're moving. Anime characters' exaggerated expressions, we connect with them instantly. Caricatures and stylized arts, they amplify personality. They feel real even though they're not technically realistic. And this works for any art style, realistic, abstract, stylized, you name it. The key takeaway, don't just capture what something looks like, capture how it feels. So let's recap. If you want your art to look more professional, remember these 3 psychological tricks. 1, use visual hierarchy. Make sure your composition guides the eye effortlessly. Number 2, master selective detail. Don't overwork everything. Let the viewer's brain do some of the work. Number 3, push emotions subtly, because people remember feelings more than technical accuracy. And here's the best part. Once you start thinking this way, you'll start seeing instant improvements in your work. Lighting, color, form, shadow, perspective, line art, rendering, texture, every single thing related to creating a grand masterpiece of art. I just realized how easy drawing actually is. Stay with me now. If you look at it from the perspective and standpoint of achievability, you'll easily come to realize that drawing is easy. Not just drawing, but drawing like a pro. I know you may be thinking that I'm probably not in the place to say stuff like that, because as it says, I'm no longer a beginner. So saying that drawing is easy is kind of self-righteous on my part. But before you draw any conclusion, I'm trying to convince you to the best of my abilities that pro drawing is way easier than you made it out to be. Trust me fam, just lock in. Learning to draw these days is much easier compared to in the past. You see, people like myself and Leonardo da Vinci were born in the early 1450s, and as at then, believe it or not, there was no internet, no Wi-Fi, no Google, no YouTube. There was nothing of that sort. So in order to learn to draw and paint, we had to rely on in-person methods, like being apprentices to great artists and learning the best methods and tactics we could learn from them. Fast forward to our time and we can both say and see for a fact that learning to draw, paint, sculpt, anything your mind can conceive is much easier than almost 600 years ago, when these methods of learning was not even a thing. So one thing I can tell you based on just this is to take advantage of the resources you have at hand, the resources made available to you. Don't take them for granted. Instead, you should utilize them, and believe me, it will yield the power to create pro art in no time. Another way drawing can become super easy is if you enjoy the process. It sounds kind of surface level, but the truth is that if you are insanely good at something, you don't necessarily have to like it. But the actual fact is that if you enjoy what you're doing, if you truly enjoy something, you'll be able to learn and gain full mastery of it in a shorter time compared to someone who doesn't have a shred of care for what that person is trying to learn. You get the point. It's kind of a mental thing because you don't like it and it's not a life or death thing, so your brain won't take in as much as it could potentially take in. It's kind of self-explanatory, to be honest, but that's that. The last thing I can say is that you should practice, because the fact is that you cannot dodge practicing. You simply can't start at level 70 and expect to be at level 100 in a week, a day, or even a month. It's annoying to an extent, but it is what it is. Trust me, I feel you and I can relate to that, but there is no dodging this step. If anybody here on YouTube or anywhere tells you that you can go from beginner to top tier pro in a month, I'm sorry to say to you that they've lied to you, because drawing progress takes time. You've probably all seen PewDiePie's 365 days drawing progress, and it's clear that he improved, but at the same time we can all agree that he is not a pro, at least not yet. Now, with that said, I have to say that despite all the time that will pass when on your art journey, you will eventually become a pro artist and you will realize that art is actually very easy. Check the link in the description if you want to buy my art. Thank you. Subscribe also.